Imagining Chapel. My name is Amanda Esco, and I am the director of the Religious Education program here at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. Thank you for joining me today. Let's begin by lighting our chalice. Symbol of light, symbol of knowledge, symbol of warmth, symbol of freedom. We light this chalice as a symbol of our faith. Here we gather to celebrate hope and the infinite possibilities of love. As you may remember, this month in religious education and our small group ministry program here at First Church, we are focusing on the idea of commitments and what we are committed to as Unitarian Universalists. We broke this into a couple different areas this month. So our commitment to change, curiosity, conscience, compassion, and our church. So this week, we're going to focus on our commitments to our conscience. And speaking of that, look at this neat book that our senior minister, Reverend Tom Goldsmith, gave to me. It is a book about Universalist and Unitarian women ministers, and it was published in the 1970s. This book is a treasure trove of histories of female ministers in our community. I feel so fortunate that we have things like this around so we can learn more about the people that came before us. Look for a history for our Yo-Yo of the Week straight from this book. Let's begin our worship today by taking a big breath. I'm going to use our singing bowl once again. I find it helps ground us all. We're going to breathe in 3 times today. Are you ready? Take a second, stand, or sit in a comfortable position and get yourself really grounded. I'm going to ding the bowl. Before that, though, I want you to take a deep breath in through your nose, and then we're going to let it out as soon as you hear the sound go. We're going to let it out slowly. You ready? Okay, getting yourself grounded, quiet in this space. Deep breath in through your nose. Let's do that again. Deep breath in through our nose. And one final time. Deep breath in through your nose. Thank you for grounding yourself with me. These moments of quiet and peace help center ourselves. Also centering ourselves is sharing what's on our minds. I invite you now to share your joys and concerns with the people that are in your house that love you the most. I'll be right here waiting for when you're done. Thank you for sharing your joys and concerns with the people around you. They love you. So much is changing in our world right now that it's a good thing to take a second and evaluate what's happening and maybe what's sitting on your heart a little bit, either for good or not so good. Thank you for sharing. Well, our Yo-Yo of the Week is really something this week, and I can't wait to share this Reverend with you. On this third week of Women's History Month, I want to focus on someone very close to home, the very first female minister of the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City, Reverend Mila Tupper Maynard. Mila was born on January 26, 1864, to Alan and Ellen Tupper in Brighton, Iowa. She was one of several sisters. Her family were pioneers. They had moved to Iowa from Maine in 1849, about 15 years before Mila was born. Her father was a Baptist minister, and her mother was a newspaper writer and editor. It was unusual for white middle to upper class women to be working out of the home at that time, and may have inspired Mila and her sisters to create professions outside of being a wife and mother. While the family loved the Iowa Plains, it was hard to find quality schools for the Tupper sisters. Educating their daughters was important to Alan and Ellen, so they always went out of their way to find a school that would work for their daughters. For her elder sister, Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, this meant traveling back to Maine. Mila was able to find a school, however, in downtown Des Moines, but it meant quite a bit of travel. After high school, Mila went on to teach school for about 3 years before finishing her college undergraduate degree at Cornell University. During her school vacations, she would visit her elder sister, Reverend Eliza, and help her with her ministry in the Iowa Plains. Once she graduated from Cornell, she was ordained, like her sister, as a Unitarian minister. She joined her sister in 1887 to help her with her congregation in Laverne, Minnesota. After that, Mila went on to serve congregations in Indiana and Michigan. Women in the ministry were still seen as a novelty at best and an embarrassment at worst from Unitarian leaders in Boston, including Reverend Samuel Atkins Elliott. Female ministers were pushed outside of the East Coast and found congregations to serve in the Greater Plains and as far as the West Coast, like Nevada and Utah. Mila was a generous, educated woman who was a gifted speaker. She was committed to social justice issues such as economic equity for all and women's suffrage. She used her pulpit as a way to advance not only liberal religion, but social justice issues. While serving in a congregation in Grand Rapids, Michigan, Mila met her future husband, Reverend Augustus Maynard. They met and fell in love. This did not come without controversy, though, as Resin was married to someone else at the time. Their love prevailed, however, and the couple were married and shortly left Michigan to move to Reno, Nevada, where Resin had a position lined up as local congregation. While in Nevada, Mila continued her early teaching career and began teaching theology at the University of Nevada. In addition to teaching, Mila became active in several causes, including prison reform, especially after her time working as a prison chaplain. Her advocacy also extended to women's suffrage, property rights, socialism, and children's rights. After their time in Nevada, the couple heard of a new up-and-coming ministry position in no other than Salt Lake City, Utah. The couple arrived here in December of 1897. The Salt Lake Tribune ran an article announcing their arrival and that the couple would be serving the congregation as co-ministers. They would evenly split the pulpit, with one of them taking Sunday morning worship and the other taking Sunday evening worship, flipping it the next week, just to be fair. In Salt Lake, Mila's sermons were radical. She connected science, humanism, and the divine spirit together. She advocated for freedom of thought in our faith, saying, quote, "Freedom in the search for truth and cooperation for moral and religious ends among those whose opinions may not agree are the distinguishing features of this truly modern church." She liked to continue to advocate for education for all, including lecturing on the necessity of early childhood education, like kindergarten. While she was not alive when it was founded, I think she would have supported the advancement of the Community Cooperative Nursery School, otherwise known as CCNS. founded by members of our congregation that still finds a home in our campus today. Mila and Reverend left Salt Lake City in 1899 for Denver, Colorado. There, they continued preaching and working on social justice causes, specifically socialism. At the time, the socialist movement was involved heavily in working with workers' rights and unions throughout the West Coast. Mila also wrote a book about Walt Whitman titled Walt Whitman, Poet of the Wider Selfhood. In 1907, they moved to California to continue their advocacy work. Mila continued to teach religious studies and work for women's suffrage. She also tried to begin a new Unitarian church in Los Angeles. When the United States entered World War I, many in their socialist circles were against the U.S. involvement. Mila and Reverend, however, fully supported the U.S. entering the war. Due to their differences, Mila resigned from the Socialist Party in 1918. Mila Frances Tupper Maynard died in Los Angeles in 1926. She is remembered as a radical thinker, minister, and advocate. In one of her first sermons in Salt Lake, Mila said, "We can join hands and help to make good things better, and the worst good insofar as we are able. We can cooperate to bear one another's burdens and the burdens of all the weak ones of the earth. We can, by this, gain an inspiration in our struggle to be earnest, sincere, pure, and unselfish." Thank you, Mila, for sharing your ministry with the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City.
I'm Liz Olander, and I'm the Religious Education Assistant at the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City. This week in RE, we have been talking about our commitment to conscience. But what does that mean, conscience? Maybe there's a clue in the Wonder Box. The first thing in here is this tube. We are committed to using our conscience. Did you hear what I said? Probably not. I whispered a message in this tube. Could you tell what it was? I'm pretending that the message is from my inner voice. It is a small voice that is sometimes called our conscience. I said, we are committed to conscience. Conscience is the voice in your head and a feeling in your heart that tells you something is right or wrong. Could you hear what I said that time? Maybe not, because our conscience is on the inside. It's not a big, loud outside voice. What I said was, conscience is the voice in your head and the feeling in your heart that tells you if something is right or wrong. In the past 2 weeks, we've explored 2 different commitments UUs make. 1, our commitment to curiosity. 2, our commitment to change. And this week, we're talking about our commitment to conscience. We, as Unitarian Universalists, have 7 principles. We all know that, right? Some congregations, including our own, are thinking about adopting an 8th principle. Our members are learning about it and having many conversations. And when we are ready, the adult members will vote and decide whether or not they want to adopt the 8th principle. Friends, that is the democratic process at work in our community. Now who remembers what number 5 says? Speaking of the democratic process, sing the song. Just kidding. When we sing our principles song, number 5 is, all people have a say. But the longer version of this principle has the word conscience in it. It says, the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process within our congregations and in society at large. In order for democracy like ours to work, we trust that each person has this inner voice or conscience and uses it when they have a say or a vote. Conscience is the voice in your head and the feeling in your heart that tells you if something is right or wrong. We Unitarian Universalists believe that everyone has a conscience. Inherent worth and dignity of every person. That goes along with our first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. If everyone has a still small voice inside guiding them towards good, then they also have worth and deserve dignity. This is our commitment to conscience, one of our core beliefs. We believe there is at least the possibility of good in every person. You have a conscience in you too. And I said, you have a conscience in you too. And not only people have a conscience, but you might also hear someone say that big groups of people all together have a collective conscience. And I think the best way to tap into the conscience of a nation like America is by looking to our artists. I have a few more things in my box. This is a photographer named Gordon Parks. He used his camera like a weapon against racism. He captured candid images of people from all walks of life, including images of segregation, like this one. These African American children could only look at the playground through a fence because they were not allowed to play on it. Looking at pictures like this makes me feel really sad. But it's also important to remember our history and to think about how those children might have felt, so we can make sure that this never happens again. As Unitarian Universalists, our fifth principle challenges us to listen to our conscience and then use our voice to act on it. So, let's all practice hearing that still small voice that helps you know what's right. And if you need more help hearing it, your community is here for you. Thank you for joining me for this conscientious edition of the Wonder Box. To learn more about the First Unitarian Church of Salt Lake City and our work in the world, go to slcuu.org.
One, each person is important. Two, be kind in all you do. Three, help each other.